I've always thought I would love to decorate cakes. I would love to do that for a living, but I never took it seriously because growing up in a bakery, I know what the regulations are in the food industry and what it required. I was like, I'm never going to get a commercial kitchen space living where we live because it's insanely expensive. So how am I just going to start doing this? And it wasn't until a friend saw this cake that I made and she was like, what are you doing? You need to figure out a way to make this work. You need to do this, figure it out, make it happen. All it took was one person. I just did a quick Google and I realized my assumptions all along that I could never do this were wrong.
Hello and welcome to My Great Pivot, the podcast where we talk to female founders in all stages of the entrepreneurial journey. I'm Carrie Regan, and I'm obsessed with stories of entrepreneurs who risk it all to pursue their dreams. I want to share a little secret about this week's guest. We'd already spoken about another business she launched in the past year. But when I found out about her newest venture, I couldn't resist the chance to speak with her again. Why would anyone launch two businesses in 1 year? She didn't realize that she could turn the idea she was most passionate about into an actual business, given the resources she had available. In a few minutes, you'll find out how she did it and how following that passion has really paid off. Breanna Hoepner is the founder of Once Upon a Cake Studio. Breanna spent 24 years in television before mass layoffs opened the door to something she'd been putting off for far too long. A quick heads up, if you want to give this episode a little bit of context and see some of Breanna's creations for yourself, check out the YouTube version of this podcast or head to her website, onceuponacakestudio.com, with a link in the show notes. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hello, Breanna. Welcome to the My Great Pivot podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You are the founder and I imagine head baker at the Once Upon a Cake Studio.
Yes, I am the sole person at Once Upon a Cake for now.
Oh, yes, we are going to get into that. That is a big question. But first, tell me all about Once Upon a Cake.
So I have a cake studio where I have a line of signature cakes that people can just purchase as is, click on the website and order. But really what I love doing and what my specialty is custom cakes. You come to me with your wildest fantasies of what you want, and I craft it out of buttercream or fondant, whatever you want. And yeah, and I love doing it. I love doing themed parties. I'm right now in the design process for a Great Gatsby cake. It's a lot of fun. You get to use all of your creative beans and bring something to life.
I have seen your Instagram page and the cakes are insane. They're amazing. How long have you been doing this?
My entire life, literally. I grew up in a bakery. So my grandfather started the family bakery in 1949. He returned home from the war and he just opened up a bakery. And then my father took over the bakery in the 70s, 80s. I think my grandfather had 2 heart attacks and then was finally like, I can't do this anymore. My dad took it over and I literally grew up in a bakery.
That's amazing. And were you back there actually helping to make the cake? Were you running the cash register? Were you just doing it all?
So I started going into the bakery when I was very little. Like when I was a toddler, my dad would bring me in because it was a full-fledged bakery. So my dad was up and at work at 2 o'clock in the morning, 6 days a week. And on special days, he would bring either me or my sister in with him. And it was like just this big, exciting thing that we got to go into the bakery at before the sun came up with my dad. And he would always bring a sleeping bag with him for us. And we thought that we were like there, we were going to help him make all the rolls and the donuts and the breads and everything. And we would inevitably fall asleep on a 100-pound sack of flour in our sleeping bag. And it's lovely. But then once I got old enough to actually be of assistance, I ran the cash register, waited on customers, and then was frosting stuff, decorating cookies, doing all that kind of stuff. So the actual cakes themselves, like I think that I probably really started getting into it probably when I became a mom, actually, because it's something that was always in my life and it was stuff that I did. And I remember in college, I would make cakes for my friends Or actually, before I became a mom, I remember I made baby shower cakes for colleagues and stuff like that. So it was just something that I like to do. But really, when I started going crazy with it was once I became a mom. And it was like every year trying to come up with something bigger and better than what I did the year before. And so I've been a mom now for 16 years. So 16 times three kids, there's been a lot of cakes that I've made over the course of this time. But yeah, it started when I was really little.
So when you would have birthday parties for your kids, their parents would come and they would see these cakes. So were you the mom where it was like, "My kid's got a birthday coming up if you have some spare time?"
I was, but it's actually really funny because it became a joke where one of my good friends, it's actually really cute. She made a birthday cake for her kid one year and her husband gave her so much grief over it. And he's like, Brianna's going to be at the party. And it's just hilarious because there's zero judgment because this isn't something that I think people should be able to just do. It's not just, doesn't necessarily come naturally, especially to everybody. But I did make cakes for friends. I did. But I think it was a lot of just making them for my own kids because it takes a lot of time. And back then, I wasn't going to accept money from someone to make cakes. So I did make cakes for a handful of friends, but it wasn't a regular thing because I think people recognize how much time went into it. And they were like, there's no way that I can ask Brianna to do this for me.
Okay, talk to me about the evolution of cakes because the cakes that we had growing up, 70s,
Totally
80s,
different.
whatever, totally different from what you see now. Was it the show Is It Cake? Was
Yeah.
it that whole trend
I
of
don't know, but I feel like it's like that with everything in our lives. Take whatever we experienced in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and just multiply it by a gazillion for almost everything. Because, like, our birthday parties also were not bonkers. I remember having birthday parties at McDonald's and we would play a game where we would drop like the little coffee stirs into a cup and that constituted a birthday party. And when you think of everything that people are doing now and gender reveals and everything has just gotten bigger. And maybe it's just social media. Everything is for show now. And so, what was a birthday party for the people who were just there when we were growing up, now everything is on display.
yeah, including these incredible cakes. And did you
Thanks.
have to take classes to learn how to make these
No,
cakes as they
I
evolved? Did you
never
just
did. No. And
yeah.
so, like the recipes that I use, so for me, a beautiful cake is a beautiful cake, and that is important. But first and foremost, it needs to taste good because there's no purpose in having a beautiful cake if it doesn't taste good. And there are a lot of cakes out there that are gorgeous, but they're not enjoyable to eat. So you have to have both. And so the recipes that I have, I do use some family recipes. So, like the white cake recipe that I use, that's my grandfather's recipe from 1949. The recipe is called, you go on the website, it's called the 1949. So I never took any classes on decorating. And I find that the internet is amazing. And while it's something that I have been practicing my entire life, going to social media, seeing something new that I've never done before, I see it and then I'm curious, how did someone make it? I can find that pretty much anything you can find how to make it. And then I just start practicing it. And I'm like, okay, cool, I can do this. And it's really fun because I do have the skill set that I have and I have the background that I have. Something that looks like it should be really difficult and something that intimidates me to try, I try it and I'm like, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. The internet is amazing for that.
You must get these requests for these cakes where they're just absolutely outlandish, though. Is anything have you ever gotten a request where you said, "Oh my god, they're just asking for the moon. This is impossible."
No, it's not because usually anything that someone is asking for is something that they've already seen. And so to be totally honest, I welcome that. The crazier the better because I feel like if I'm just doing the same thing all the time, I'm going to get sick of it. So I welcome the challenge and I'm always up for it and it is so much fun for me. I think the most challenging part of it is if someone is asking for the sun, moon, and stars, but then the budget that they have on hand is reflective of a cake you would get from the grocery store, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it needs to be realistic because there will be a cake that could take 10 hours just to decorate. Like that doesn't even include baking it and all the planning that goes into it and everything. If something that's 10 hours of my time just to decorate it, that's not the same as getting a cake from the grocery store. So that's the biggest challenge that I have. But in terms of people having outlandish ideas, the bigger the better, bring it on. Because I feel like years ago, I made a cake and it's on the website that was a Tom and Jerry themed cake and it was all in fondant and it was sculpted. And I remember I made that cake and I was actually depressed after I made it because I was like, what am I going to do after this? There is nothing. This is as good as it's ever going to get. I've peaked and it's all downhill from here. And like, where do we go from here? And so I'm happy to take on whatever challenges there are.
What has been your most challenging cake to date other than Tom and Jerry?
And seeing the thing, the Tom and Jerry one wasn't even that hard. It was just time. It just took a lot of time. The most challenging cake. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Do you have a favorite that you've made?
Yeah, I do. And it was actually just a month ago. There was a gala at a local high school. It's actually my daughter's high school. They had a big fundraiser and it was Mardi Gras themed. So I made this 4-tier cake using the branding from the event. And that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to make. But I think what I loved the most about it is one of my dearest friends, my best friend, she was the graphic designer for the event. And I was actually the decorator for the event. And it was really fun to work with someone who I love so much and something that she had designed in terms of all the print materials and the decor that was going up in the space where we were. And so I was using something that was designed by a dear friend of mine. And then I was taking all those design elements and applying them to cake. And that was a lot of fun.
That does sound quite
Yeah.
cool.
It's
Yeah.
fun coming from a background where I worked in television for 20 something years. Everything is a collaboration. You are working with other people closely to bring something to life. And when I'm doing cakes, yes, I'm working with the client. They're giving me their ideas and we go back and forth with thoughts on how to best approach something. But to work so closely with something that a friend designed down to the tiny details of it, it was a lot of fun.
I can see where coming from that production background where you are working with other people, you're getting ideas from other people and inspiration is coming from all over. Suddenly you're a one-person band. Does it
Mhm.
feel really solitary? I can see where having that creative collaboration must have felt refreshing.
Yes and no, because I love working with people and I love collaborating. But let's also be real. Sometimes it's really nice to just get to do what you want to do. Because how many times working in media are you getting all this feedback and you're like, ugh, I don't like that. Just let me
Wait,
do it.
not network notes. Are you talking about those notes
I know.
or
And
what
I was
are you talking about?
networked.
No, me too.
Yeah. So, yes and no. I love collaborating with people. But something that's really nice about this is like when I put together a design proposal for a client, we'll put together a vision board
Mm.
of the elements that we're going for, and there's always a very clear understanding. The images that are on this vision board, they're in the spirit of, it's in the design of, but I consider myself an artist with this. As an artist, it's going to be open to my interpretation or the methods that I want to use. It's going to be in the style of, in the spirit of what we are agreeing on here, but it's not going to be identical. That would be a crazy thing to ever agree to because things change. And so it is nice because I do have that open-ended flexibility where I can put my own spin on it. And once we come to an agreement about this is the concept behind it, then I'm left on my own to execute it. And the design often evolves.
I love this that you have this process baked in. It's not simply a question of somebody reaches out, says, "This is what I want," and then they get your cake. Do you think that was influenced by your media experience and your background?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it influenced by media and background because we would always have a game plan. It would all be written down. There'd be a presentation of sorts where it's this is what the plan is and this is what we're going to do. If it's just a simple happy birthday cake, you don't need to go to that extent. But when we're getting more into the design and sculpted pieces, That's necessary, especially if I'm going to expect them to trust me to execute it. And if someone is going to be investing in a specialty custom cake like this, they need to see everything that's right there. There needs to be full transparency because I want them to understand what is going into this. And them being a part of that process helps them to understand, oh, yeah, this isn't just happy birthday, Susie.
That can be a metaphor for any business, right? Hey, you want a custom cake for a grocery store cake price. What is your pricing strategy? Are you looking at obviously the cost of the ingredients, but then are you looking at your time per hour and charging according to that with the custom cakes?
It's not even looking at time per hour because and to be totally honest, I have not taken the time to ever really sit down and calculate, this is how much I charged and this is how much time went into it. I have never taken the time to do that. And this is crazy to think because I have done so much in the last 2 months. The business officially launched less than 2 months ago. It came so quickly. Once I finally was like, I need to actually do this, and then I just did it. It came together so quickly. But for pricing, it's so hard to predict how long something is going to take. I have a pretty good understanding, but you never know until you're in it. And being in a creative zone, I would assume you're the same way. Once you get rolling on something and you're in a groove, you blink and all of a sudden hours have passed and you have no idea where that time went. Like all of a sudden I come out and I have this cake that I'm super happy with and I look at the clock and I'm like, oh crap, I was supposed to pick up my kids 2 hours ago. So I can never really fully anticipate how long something is gonna take me. I can estimate, but I'm not gonna charge on an hourly basis. So really, it's more of how detailed something is and how tiny the fine detailing involved in it. And it depends on something that's fondant versus something that's buttercream, something that I can do from a fondant mold versus something I have to do by hand with tiny little tools. It all goes into consideration.
Are you at the stage where you're able to buy ingredients in bulk now?
Yeah, I am. And this is the crazy thing because this has all happened so quickly. I have not been able to dedicate time to sit down to really price everything out. But for right now, I'm able to get stuff from Costco for bulk. They sell flour and sugar in 25 and 50-pound sacks. So I'm doing that. And that makes a huge difference. But again, because I'm out of my house, it's what do I do with 50 pounds of flour then? So we're getting that straightened out. Like very soon, that's all going to be under control. But actually, it's funny. I just purchased yesterday my second 50-pound bag of sugar in the month. And I was like, I went through 50 pounds of sugar in less than a month. That's so much. And powdered sugar, I need to calculate it, but I think I've gone through something like 60 pounds of powdered sugar in the last month.
Oh
And the
my
amount of
goodness.
butter is stupid. I won't even look at that because that's crazy.
We're gonna listen to this in a few years, and you're gonna be like, "Wow, I remember when a 50-pound bag of sugar was a
Yeah,
lot for a
I
month.
know,
That
I
was
hope.
nothing." Yeah, yeah. You mentioned 20 years in the media industry. What motivated this pivot?
I was laid off. Thank God. I was a producer in television for, yeah, 24 years, 24-year-long career. At the end, I was a network executive. I watched many rounds of layoffs take place. I was not a happy person there. But I think, like with a lot of careers, the money is good, it's reliable, you've built your life on your income that you have, and at that point, even though I was miserable, I had my family, we had our routine, I'm like, "I can't justify leaving just because I'm unhappy. What is that?" So by the time my round of layoffs came, I knew there was no way I was gonna survive that round of layoffs, and if I was at the point where, to be totally honest, I was so unhappy that I was just lightly looking for other work, but the industry had died. There was no work to be had out there. But I was really relying on that layoff because I was at that company for 12 years. And I'm like, yeah, I'll just hold on. I'm going to grin and bear it until the next round of layoffs come. They're going to take me and I'm going to get my severance. And that's what happened.
Being a media industry veteran, this sounds so familiar. Same thing, layoff, round of layoff after round of layoff. I think in the back of our minds, we're always considering when we hear about that last round of layoffs, those friends who've lost
Yeah.
their jobs. seeing how they're looking for work, they're not finding any opportunities. We're always thinking, what would I do? What can I pivot to? Was this always in the back of your mind?
No. And that's the crazy thing. It's crazy to me that I didn't think of this because I was laid off. My last official day was in September of 2024, and the business officially opened February of 26. So, first of all, I think I probably did need a good year just to decompress and just to become human again after everything that I had experienced. So, I think I needed that time. But I also did not really take this idea seriously ever. I've always thought I would love to decorate cakes. I would love to do that for a living, but I never took it seriously. It was just a little voice that I would swat down. And the reason why I never took it seriously was because growing up in a bakery and seeing what it did to my family, just in terms of what's required. My dad was working 6 days a week, starting at 2 a.m., but he had a full baking operation with a storefront and everything. And so I always knew I had zero desire to ever do that. I'm like, I would just want to do cakes, maybe throw in cookies, cupcakes, whatever. But I never wanted to have a full operation. But because I grew up in a bakery and I know what the regulations are in the food industry and what it required, I was like, I'm never going to get a commercial kitchen space living where we live because it's insanely expensive. And I was like, so how am I just going to start doing this? And it wasn't until my youngest turned 3 and we had his birthday party in early December. And it was actually a friend who was formerly in the media industry. She saw this cake that I made for my kid's 3rd birthday, and she was like, "What are you doing? You need to figure out a way to make this work. You need to do this." And I was like, "It's not possible because I'm not gonna go get a commercial space." And she's, "Figure it out, make it happen." And so all it took was one person, and people have said similar to me all along, but for whatever reason, because I'm in the place that I'm in right now where, I've been doing gig work, but nothing regular. It took her saying that to me. I just did a quick Google and I realized my assumptions all along that I could never do this out of my home were wrong. You can do it. It's called a cottage food business. And I was too ignorant to know that was an option. And so there are regulations, there are rules that I have to follow being a cottage food business, and it puts limitations on what food products I can sell. So I can't do anything that requires refrigeration because you need to have refrigeration space, like a walk-in fridge. So I can do it. And it was very easy to then get going and to start up. And so for years, even though it's something that I fantasized about wishing I could do, I never thought that it was something that I could do because I thought that it would require the overhead investment right off the bat of going and getting a commercial space, and it wasn't necessary. But now I'm in a place where I want to go get a commercial space. I'm quickly growing out of my kitchen here, and I'm looking forward to figuring out how to tackle that one. So,
It's amazing that this idea was in front of you all along. And it was
yeah.
just that one Google that made you suddenly realize, holy cow, I can start small. I can do
Yeah.
this legally.
Yeah, it's totally on the up and up. They have a cap on how much you can earn as income as a cottage food. Once you hit a certain number, they're like, "Yeah, you're no longer cottage food. You gotta go someplace else." But yeah, I was so surprised when I learned that, and I was shocked, and I was really excited. This is something that people know about, and I hadn't. It was not on my radar. I had no clue. And other people, they're like, "Oh, yeah, cottage food." I'm like, "Why didn't you share that with me years ago? I could have started this forever ago."
And it sounds like you don't even need the social media marketing, that these things just market themselves at every
But
event.
it's, social media is super helpful. It is interesting because every time a cake goes out, I do get a couple new people on social media. Someone is introduced to one of my cakes, and then I have new followers after every event that I send a cake off to. It's very helpful. And so it's nice. Yeah. If I don't have to pay money for marketing at this point, sign me up.
Yeah. Can I just get into how you keep your books? You said that you're so busy, you're not necessarily keeping a careful accounting of it. So
Yeah.
are you just at the point where you're saying, okay, I'm making more than I'm sending out?
So earlier this week, I finally got my accounting software in place and I was sitting down to start reconciling it. So I'm going through that process right now. And I'm literally started this week and stuff goes back to really when I started this in December. So I'm digging my way out of it right now. So really right now it is a matter of money out, money in, but I'm narrowing it down. And so I am going to be able to set aside time at some point in the near future to also look at, because my ingredients, like you said, like buying in bulk, super helpful that I'm able to do that. But some of my ingredients, like I use Ghirardelli chocolate for everything. And so I have not been able to find that in bulk anywhere yet. I need to devote more time to try to figure out where I can find that. So I need to do more research and explore how I can bring costs down without modifying the ingredients in the recipes because I'm first and foremost, like I said, it needs to taste good. And I'm not willing to compromise on that. So if it means I have less profit because I'm using premium ingredients, I would rather that than have a subpar product.
If there are any local business school students who are studying supply chain and procurement who want to tackle this for you in exchange for
Yes.
cake, you know?
Yes. I will give you cake.
Oh my God, what a great case study that would be for anyone.
Yeah.
Have there been any tools that have been useful for you as you've built your business?
Yes. And I am so ashamed to say AI has been really helpful in helping me troubleshoot through something. So I'll give you an example. Old family recipes, they were made in huge quantities. So the cake recipes that I have, we've shrunken down to be more household size. But now, as I'm making stuff that's bigger and smaller, I'm modifying the size of it all the time. So when you have large quantity of cake batter that you're making. So, like, my dad would make it in a 100 quart mixer. It was enormous. And when you take a recipe from that and you break it down to be something more household friendly, it changes the components. So it's not just a straight up ratio that you're changing. I use what's called high ratio shortening. When you cut down into smaller quantities, the shortening breaks down differently. So it doesn't break down the same if it's in a smaller quantity. And so for a while, I was making my grandfather's cake, and my dad was one, the texture seems a little bit off. It almost seems a little gritty. And he was right. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm like, there's something that is slightly off. It still tasted delicious. It was just, there was a fine I don't think people would really notice it, honestly. But we could tell that there was something, there's just like a fine little grit in there, and we couldn't figure out what it was. I went into AI and I just said, here's my recipe I'm using. This recipe comes from a massive size recipe that we've broken down. What is going on here? Why is there this grit? And AI
Mm,
came back to me and was like, oh, that's because of your ratios when you use this instead of that. It was amazing. And it talked me through it, gave me step by step directions on how to rectify it. And now it's perfect. It's so smooth. There's zero grit. And I'm like, who would have known? So, yes, AI has been extremely helpful.
And this is the thing. There are a lot of concerns surrounding AI that are very justifiable, but in a lot of ways too, it is this great equalizer, be it in the media industry where you're able to use all these tools, generate backgrounds or use generated narrators or visuals. And in this case, where you don't have to hire these outside consultants, that there's a lot that you can manage to do on your own.
Right.
As much as the concerns about it destroying jobs or destroying the creative process are entirely valid, it's also giving people the tools to be able to launch their own businesses and create things and share their vision in a world where they wouldn't have been able to before because the barriers to entry were so
Yep.
high.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. I don't want to rely on AI too heavily. When you need help, it's there and it is super insightful.
Yeah.
And I've even had things where, for instance, if I have a reference photo that someone sends me that they would like some elements replicated in their cake, and I look at it and I have a thought in my head on how I would execute it. But if I'm not fully confident, that would be the best way to approach it. I've put the image in AI and asked, how would I recreate this? And it talks me through it.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
again, that expert's help would be so expensive or maybe even not even accessible.
So expensive, and I don't know who that person would be. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know who that person would be.
And any other business building tools that you found helpful?
I think social media is helpful, although I hate social media. It's something that I honestly don't want to learn how to utilize properly, even though it's something I do need to learn how to utilize properly. For a while, I was going to have my 16-year-old manage my social media, but it was actually very sweet. She calls me boomer because I'm just such an old lady when it comes to social media. But for a while, she was going to be running it. And finally, she said to me, she goes, Mom, this is really stressing me out because if I mess up, I don't want to be the reason your business doesn't succeed. And I was like, I didn't want to put that pressure on you. I just thought this comes so naturally to you. So I've not put that on her because I wouldn't want her to ever feel like she's disappointing me because of social media.
We need you and
Right.
your digital native expertise.
Exactly.
Had you considered other entrepreneurial ideas along the way?
Oh, yes, I have. And I still do this. So, my family is big into sports and I come from media. And so, I have another business on the side where I edit together highlight reels for student athletes looking to go play at the next level at college. So, I edit together their reels that then they send on to college coaches. And yeah, so I work with student athletes doing that. I mostly work with their parents, if I'm being honest.
I imagine that might be very seasonal. Is it?
No, it's not because with all the different sports and the recruiting process, every sport has its own calendar and they have their indoor seasons, their outdoor, and really it's in their best interest to have a fresh reel after each season because you want to just be peppering these coaches with updated footage. And so it's not seasonal. There are times like soccer, I think soccer recruitment starts June 1st. That's when they can officially start speaking to the kids, and lacrosse is September 1st. So they all have their own timeline. So before winter break and before summer, people are in a rush to get highlight reels because a lot of the colleges will have camps and showcases that their athletes will be participating in. And so you really want to get footage to the coaches in advance so you can get the coaches excited and interested in you. So that way they make an attempt to look at you when you are there in front of them. And so a lot of people, they wait until the last minute. They're like, oh, shoot, my kid has camp coming up in 2 weeks. I need a reel now. So yeah, there are peaks around the holidays and then during the summer, but it's year round.
So you have 2
Mhm.
businesses where people could potentially be calling you at the last minute desperately needing something that takes a fair amount of time then.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Not stressful at all.
No,
Yeah, but you're
I don't
used to
know
it.
when I'm gonna ever take vacation again because I forgot after having so many years of being a salaried employee, going back to gig work. Because really this is like, it's gig work. It's interesting because we're gonna have to figure out going forward how we're gonna do this for our family and the calendar and how this operates because I'm gonna have to block off time so I cannot be on the clock.
And it can be exhausting and draining, but at the same time, you're clearly so energized when you're talking about it. Do you feel that way? I hear this that even these founders who are working twice as many hours than they might have at a day job, at a 9 to 5 job working
Yeah.
for somebody else, that it's so much less draining, even though it is
Yeah.
so many more hours.
It's 1,000 times less draining because I'm having fun with it, and I'm doing something that I enjoy that brings me happiness, and it's a creative outlet. When I'm done making something, I love to look at it and be like, "Wow, that just started literally with butter and sugar and flour," and it's crazy to me.
I'm so excited to show some of your photos of your cakes in the YouTube version of this and also link to your Instagram page.
Thanks.
So your 2 businesses, Once Upon a Cake Studio, as well as Elite Edge is your athlete
Mhm.
recruiting video business.
Yep.
What percentage would you say you spend on each one of them if you had to generalize?
Oh, I spend way more on the cakes now than I do on the lead edge. A lot of people make their own highlight reels, and it's something, again, you can make your own cakes too. But I think that it's with software and with tools that people have at their disposal, and especially now with AI tools that everyone has, I think people have more access to making something that gets the job done with that one. I still have people, of course, coming to me. And in fact, I even had someone just this last week reach out and they're having me put together their musicians reel to send to colleges. But I would say my time is 95% cakes right now. Yeah, there's a lot of cakes going on. And again, if you could see what this room looked like, you'd be appalled. You'd be like, "Oh, there's a lot of insanity happening."
That sounds amazing. A life that's 95% cakes. There's this notion of the portfolio career where
Yeah.
people bring in different unrelated or what appear to be really unrelated jobs, and they build a career that have these very different parts of the
Yeah.
portfolio. I feel like that appeals to people who are in the media because we're so accustomed to working on different stories all the
Yeah.
time. And if we're not constantly challenged and constantly learning and growing and able to work on something new and different, we get bored easily. That's
Yeah.
my thought. At least you feel that way?
Yes, I get bored easily. And I feel like there are times in life, though, where I think it's good to be bored. I feel like I can be overstimulated at times, and I feel like the people in my orbit don't benefit from that when I'm overstimulated. So, boredom from time to time is a very good thing. It's very nice to have that reset. But one of the things, too, being a storyteller and coming from a media background, I feel like it is still so closely related to what I do here. And that's why the name of my cake business is Once Upon a Cake, because I'm a storyteller at heart. And I feel like these cakes, they tell a story. It's going to sound so cheesy, but yes, your typical cake that just has the piping on it and whatever, like your birthday cake, traditional cake, that's not any kind of storytelling. But when I get into the crafted, sculpted character cakes that go with a theme or a party, that's all a part of storytelling. And for me, it's the same thing as when I was making TV. It's like you're starting from nothing, you have an idea in your head, there's little elements out in the universe that are influencing your ideas and your designs and the concepts, and you're bringing them together basically from nothing. And to me, it's the same thing. And I get the same feeling inside when I step back and I look at the final product. It's the same thing. Something that I say on my website, they're not just cakes, they're also the centerpiece of your party. So it's the conversation piece. You have these parties and center of your table with all of your themed decor and everything is this cake. It's a talking piece. And so people gravitate towards it and it generates conversation and I think it's so much fun to do that. It's like a TV show,
I
just in
love
cake
that.
form.
I saw that on your website too. You talk about them being story-driven cakes. I love that.
Mhm. No, and that's why it's Once Upon a Cake.
To that end, you mentioned that it is the centerpiece of these events. These are big life events. Usually, if
Mhm,
somebody's investing in a custom cake, it's a big life
mhm.
event. It's a lot of pressure. Things must go wrong sometimes. How do you handle that? How do you bake that in, so to speak, bad pun, to the process
Yeah.
to avoid risk?
Yeah, to avoid major disaster, right?
Yeah.
Someone's relying on me. That's a real live fear that I have, but I do feel like the official business has been up and running for just a few months, but I've been doing this much longer. I used to when someone was relying on me for something, and this is not a wise thing to do because it's not economical at all, but I would have backups for everything. So if someone was getting a cake for me that was yay big, I would double it. I would make extra because if something were to go wrong, I wanted to be able to fix it. And that's not realistic. It's not something that you can do all the time. And so I'm getting better at trusting myself and trusting the process. And I am just very careful. Something too that is a challenge with this business in general is a lot of people they're having their celebrations on a Friday or Saturday or Sunday. And so you want to make the cake and decorate it. I make the cake one day and then I decorate it the second day because it needs enough time to cool. So you want to push it off until as late as possible so it can be as fresh as possible for them. But you can't cut it too close because if you run into any hiccups, then you're in big trouble. So, very good question. How do I solve that? I don't know. But I'm getting better with trusting myself now where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to totally destroy it.
So you mentioned that you've been in business for 2 months. Is that when you announced it? Is that when you went public with it? And then how did things spiral out from there?
Really, the deadline that I gave myself was December. I finally got the push. You need to do this. And so starting in December, I just got going right away with all the legal stuff, getting the trade name and filing for everything that I need to file for, and then starting to build out the website. But my big push was the gala that I had mentioned before, having a large cake that was going to be a centerpiece in front of 500 and something people who are my prime demographic. That was huge. So I wanted to have everything up and running and a website. So that way, when 500 people were all together and looking at this cake, that I would be ready for it. And that was February. And right now we're in March. So really, it's not been long. Everything happened so quickly. Social media started. A few people got cakes and then they started posting about it. And then friends of their friend. I brought a cake to a Christmas party and that launched a bunch of stuff. And so it was really one of the things that I have really been relying on is every time a cake goes to a party and say it's a kid's birthday party with 15 kids in attendance, a little girl's fairy cake goes to her birthday party and there are 15 other kids in attendance plus their parents. That is just advertising right there. That word of mouth is so rapid. And so it just goes off from there. And so last week, 2 weeks ago, I was invited to an open house, like at a wedding venue. The reason why I was invited is because someone experienced my cake at their cousin's house. And so every time a cake goes out the door, it's just an audience of new people.
Wow. So you haven't had to really spend anything on marketing.
Oh, I have not. I have not. Yeah, the most I've spent on marketing was to make a big poster that I just had on an easel next to me at this open house and like business cards. But that's not even, yeah, I've not had to invest in marketing, which is amazing.
You mentioned that you were a business of one right now, but that might change. Do you see yourself expanding, taking on staff?
I hope so. The first thing would be I need to get out of my kitchen. I need to get out of my house. And I gave myself a goal, and I don't even wanna say it out loud because I don't wanna jinx myself, but I want to eventually not be able to contain myself inside the space that I have here at home. And that means then I would need to figure out where to go from here, and that's really expensive. The overhead is crazy. I think I probably need to start taking on wedding cakes in order to help me justify that. I love doing stuff like wedding cakes, but that brings things to a whole new level of stress and that's just a whole different territory. But if there was a way where I could be selective and just do a handful of weddings a year, I think that would be amazing. And so if things keep growing at the rate that they're growing and I grow out of my house, I think the first step would be get a space. And then I would love to have somebody help me with the baking, but then also help with the assembly of the cakes because the day that I'm decorating, I'm making fresh batches of frosting, but then stacking and layering and leveling the cakes and doing like the crumb coat of them, that takes a ton of time. So if I'm ever in a position where I could have somebody help me do that part and then they just hand me a cake where I get to just start decorating it, that would be amazing. But
Oh.
we'll see.
So I imagine in your mind, you don't have to mention them, as you said, I don't want to jinx you, but you have in your mind certain milestones of how many cakes you need to be producing per week, or is it a revenue target that you need to
Yeah,
meet?
it's more of a revenue target. In my mind right now, I have a date in mind that my goal is by this date, I'm going to need to evict myself from my house. And so for me, it's a date, but in order to meet it, it would need to be a revenue target. And I can't say it would be a number of cakes because every cake is different. So if someone is just getting one of my signature cakes where they run from $95 to $200, depending on which cake and which size, that's going to be lower revenue than the custom cakes, which really take up the bulk of the time and the space and all of my resources and energy.
Yeah, and what must be so challenging too is, as you said, so many people want these cakes for the weekend. And
Yeah.
so do you find you're mostly busy during those days leading up to
Yeah.
Christmas?
What I have found now is a lot of times I'm spending Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday putting together design proposals to send out to clients, sending out the invoices, doing all of the administrative stuff. And then usually Thursday is a day for baking or Friday or both of them. And then Friday and Saturday are days for decorating.
Are there any industrial shared kitchens in the area that you could
There
go or
Yeah,
look at them?
there are, but they're still incredibly expensive. Like,
No.
they are insanely expensive. Someone actually, my sister-in-law was saying how she has heard of people renting out kitchens at local churches because they can be yeah, so if you think of a church, they're not using their kitchen necessarily around the clock if they're just using it a few hours a week. So you can rent space from them and they're considered commercial grade. So that would get me out of the cottage food bracket. And so it would open up possibilities for what else I could offer on the menu. But that could be a really great way to go. I'll tell you my dream scenario right now. In my neighborhood, there is a food hall that is a 3-minute walk from my house next to Whole Foods. And this food hall, long story, it shut down. The food hall is right now sitting empty, although I heard a sushi place is going in. But there are some ghost kitchens in there. So it's this big space. And then there are some small little kitchens that are no bigger than my actual kitchen in my house. But these businesses had their ghost kitchens and it was for takeout food only. And there was a big window, like floor to ceiling windows, and you could watch the people in these little kitchens do it. And so that would be a dream scenario for me. It's literally just minutes from my house and a space that is just for me and I can have it set up exactly how I want it and everything could be within reach. That would be just dreamy.
Okay, we're
So,
gonna
we'll
manifest that. So what's standing in the way? Is it you haven't made the outreach or
I don't need it yet. So I'm not making any form of outreach until I'm at a place where because I know me. And if I were to learn that it was an option, it would physically hurt me to not be there. And so I need to cool it and allow growth to happen. And then once I'm at that point, then trigger it.
oh, I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed. You are in the greater DC area, correct?
I am. Yep. I'm just outside of DC in Maryland.
So if anyone else, just in case this kitchen doesn't come open, if anyone else has a kitchen out in Maryland, are you Silver Spring? Is that where you are? Or
No, I'm in University Park, Maryland, which is like right next to the University of Maryland.
okay, anyone has a good industrial kitchen that they're not using, and maybe
Yes.
there's a free cake now and there.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
it's one of
Absolutely. And
those.
likewise, do you know what else I really need? So I have my stand mixer. I've been saying this now for the last 4 weeks on repeat. My stand mixer that I have, it's a commercial grade KitchenAid. I need one that is a much larger capacity because now that I'm making so many cakes, I would save so much time if I would have a 15-quart mixer where I could make all of it at once instead of doing batch after batch. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I need a giant mixer. So if anyone knows of a place that is selling used commercial kitchenware, let me know because I don't feel like buying one new.
We're putting this out into the universe. It will come. You mentioned wedding cakes as a brand extension.
Yeah.
And earlier you said too, perhaps getting into cupcakes and cookies. Do you see that? Is that on your roadmap? And if so, are
Yeah.
there milestones that you think you need to hit before you would venture into that territory?
Yeah, I'm definitely doing cupcakes. People have already been asking for cupcakes. And actually, for Mother's Day, I need to start playing around with my Mother's Day special that I want to offer, but it's going to involve cupcakes. And it's interesting because I feel like cupcakes were such a huge thing several years ago. Maybe my finger just wasn't on the pulse enough, but I thought cupcakes were done. I thought they were over with. They're not. A lot of people are asking for cupcakes. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing cupcakes. That's cool. So, yes, cupcakes are an option. And then, yeah, for weddings, I really should get into weddings. I've done wedding cakes already. I have done wedding cakes and I've done anniversary cakes that are wedding cakes, but it's just not the clientele that I have been going after, but I need to.
Do you just get sick of eating cake after a while? Or eating the
Um,
frosting? It's the frosting that I would have trouble with not eating all
No,
the time.
everybody says that, but I will tell you that was a recurring question of my childhood where like I'd be working in the bakery and everyone was like, "How do you work in this bakery?" I would not be able to do it. I'm like, "No, you get used to it. You do get used to it." That being said, my 3-year-old, because this is all new to him, He thinks that we are supposed to have cake every night because remember what I said before, I would bake double because I was paranoid that something was going to go wrong and I needed to have backup. What do you do with the backup? So we would consume it or I'd give it to friends. So my 3-year-old, he thinks that cake is just something that we're supposed to have every day. So he finishes dinner. He's like, "Where's the cake?" And I'm like, "There's no cake tonight. What is this?" That's an issue.
How many kids do you have?
3,
And what ages are they?
3, 13, 16.
Oh, wow, really spaced out. So, is
Yes.
it easier to balance parenthood with this business out of your home, or is it harder?
It's definitely easier having a business out of my home, and I think it's a necessity. Going back to the layoff and needing a year to just decompress, I think so much of it was just how exhausted I was having all of the things needing me simultaneously. That really wears on you. And so now I don't necessarily have fewer things or humans that require my attention. In fact, I probably have quite a bit more now, but I don't have a commute and I don't have just all of the layers of stress that came along with the profession that I was in before.
Yeah, and you had a child that was not a newborn, but one, as well as you were dealing with the teen years and all the activities of the
Yeah.
teen years and the
Yeah.
preteen years. You had
Yeah.
all of that hitting at once.
I did. It's a lot of fun. No, it's great. It's great. It is. I do remember when my youngest had just started daycare and I was working in the city. I was in DuPont Circle. So it was like a 45-minute drive home. I remember driving home one day and it was, again, I think it was like his first week of daycare. I was watching the clock tick while I was stuck in traffic and I was stressed out about whether or not I was going to get to daycare in time for the pickup or if I was going to get penalized for being late. And as I was stressing out about that, it was also when my daughter's high school application process was going on, and I was stressing out about her high school applications and what we were going to do about high school. And there was a moment where I was like, this is not okay. I'm stressed out about daycare pickup and high school applications. This is not right. All while driving home from work. We are all going to have stress in our life no matter what. But I think eliminating a commute and eliminating I don't wanna say the career that I had was entirely negative because it wasn't. I loved it for many years for so many reasons, but towards the end, the things that took me down were far greater than the things that gave me joy at that point, and so the balance was not worth it for me anymore. So eliminating all of that has been a huge relief and lost a commute on top of it.
And your family's been good with this.
They're super supportive, they're wonderful, and they get cake, so why shouldn't they be? They get cake and mom's available to pick them up and drive them wherever they go.
I don't know if it's the sugar and buttercream, but I can tell through your energy, you
It could
are
be.
so excited talking about all this. It's just wonderful to see. Where do you see Once Upon a Cake in 3 years?
I want to grow because I'm 45. I've got and I have a 3-year-old. Like, I'm here and I need to be working for the next however many years. Otherwise, I'm going to go insane. And also, I do want to earn money for retirement and I have kids to put to college. But I want to grow. A dream scenario for me would be I would have a kitchen space and I would have 2 people who work with me and we're just getting cake after cake. That would be my dream scenario.
And the cookies and the cupcakes too, because next time
Yes.
I'm in DC, I want to try those cookies and cupcakes.
And we could do cookies and cupcakes too.
Okay, good. I imagine the cupcakes and cookies are selling Monday through Friday, right? They don't have to be just for the weekend.
But the thing is that I don't wanna have a storefront.
Okay, you
So,
don't?
no, I do not wanna have a storefront because if you have storefront, then you have to carry inventory, and then if you have inventory, then you're gonna have stuff that's gonna be wasted. I don't wanna have inventory, so do wanna be orders only. I did recently I don't wanna jinx this. There's a large catering operation in the area who has asked if I would make cupcakes for them for their catering events. So, that's great. Give me a handful of those along with my cakes. Yeah.
On-demand, order-based business. Now, in the resistance to the storefront and carrying inventory, is that something that you saw in your father and grandfather's business that you want to avoid?
Totally. I just think that it just requires so much. And living where we live here, the overhead is just obscene. To have a storefront and everything that is involved with that, to me, it's not that it's impractical because people do it all the time. It's just not what I want for me, at least right now, because I'm still spinning mini plates here. And I want that freedom. I don't, it really is going to pin you down if you have a storefront and you have to maintain that.
Yeah, it sounds like you've gained back a lot of freedom stepping away from that media job, and you don't want to go back to that. I feel like these businesses can become what we've tried to escape if you're not really careful.
Exactly. And it's interesting because I am taking on like some small gig work in media right now. And it's really funny because I was having a conversation with someone who's in media and she said it's like the bad ex-boyfriend that you just can't escape. Like he just draws you back in. And I'm like, guess why is that? Because I'm very good at juggling many things at once. And I'm like, okay, if I could take this on here, there, whatever, I'll fit it in. But I'm like, let's get to a place with cakes where I don't have any room for anything else. That's what I
Yeah.
would like.
That's the dream. Okay, so for the woman who's sitting at her day job, she's miserable. She has a 45-minute commute each day. She's stressing about making it home to daycare. She has this dream of another business. What advice would you give her?
Do research and see if it's doable. Because honestly, like, how dumb am I? How dumb am I for never doing that? No, I think if there's something out there that's going to bring you happiness, every family is different, what their financial needs are. Don't get me wrong, losing my job in media, that was a major hit financially, but we're okay. We're able to make that work. So for us, we could still survive without it. And it was worth it. Whatever we lost financially, I made up in health and sanity. And so it was worth it. And so I really whoever's in that position, take a look at it because if you are in a place where you can financially make that change and explore something that's going to bring you happiness, go for it because it's worth it. I'm sleeping at night. I'm waking I say that I'm sleeping at night. I wasn't sleeping at night with my old job because I was just so stressed. But now I do have nights where I don't go to sleep until very late because I'm up making cakes at the last minute. So there is a trade-off being awake at 2 a.m. because you're decorating a cake that's bringing you joy. That's totally different than being awake at 2 a.m. because you are stressed about work and you're a 45-year-old woman who can't sleep.
Where can people see your cakes?
I would say first and foremost, go to the website because you're going to see so many more cakes on the website than I even have on Instagram. So the website is onceuponacakestudio.com and Instagram and Facebook, Once Upon a Cake Studio.
I'll put it in the show notes. So look on the
Perfect.
show notes of the podcast because I want people to see your cakes. And of course, if people want one of your amazing cakes and they're in the greater DC, the Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, DC area, how can they place an order with you?
Yeah. So on the website, if you want one of the signature cakes, super easy. You just click which cake you want and you place the order right there. And if you want something that's a custom cake, also go to the website and you can contact me through there. So you just fill out an inquiry form and nothing is official. You just send me an inquiry. You let me know what it is you're thinking about and when it is, and we can start talking and figure out if it's something that makes sense for you.
I can't wait to just keep following you, keep following your amazing cakes, and
Thank you.
share your story with everyone. It's been so inspiring from your family roots and how you incorporate that in the recipes, your grandfather's
Thanks.
recipes, to this business today that has brought you so much joy. That's
Yeah,
so
no,
obvious.
and it makes me happy, and I'm, like, a little teary-eyed because I'm like, I it just makes me happy that I get to do this. Yeah,
But they're looking down at you and they're just so proud. They're
yeah,
like, she's carrying on the family tradition.
yeah, and that's something that is crazy because I for the website, I have a couple photos on there of my dad when he was a teenager in the bakery and then my grandparents, and it's been so fun to go through it, and I was like, "I wish they were around." And they could see it because I think my grandfather would think that I'm insane. He'd be like, "Why are you spending so much time on one cake? That is nuts. You gotta churn and burn." My husband jokes, is maybe you should get your dad in to help you. And I'm like, can you imagine? That would be such a nightmare because my dad is my dad, and his cakes were always beautiful. But again, the standards in 1985 were very different than what we're selling now. And so we joke about it. I'm like, that actually could be a TV show when we talk about Georgetown Cupcake. Me and my dad collaborating together to make something. I love my dad. We have a great relationship, but it would get feisty very quickly.
Breanna Hoepner of Once Upon a Cake and Elite Edge athlete recruiting videos as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. It's really such an inspiring story.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, when you're in DC, let me know and I'll hook you up.
I can't wait. Thanks again to Breanna Hoepner for sharing her story and for reminding us that the idea you're passionate about might be more possible than you ever imagined. Be sure to check the show notes for links to Breanna's website, onceuponacakestudio.com, and her Instagram page, where you can see her stunning custom cake work. Fair warning, you might find yourself placing an order. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. My Great Pivot is presented by the Female Founders Project. If you'd like to share your own entrepreneurial journey, we'd love to hear from you at thefemalefoundersproject.com. Thanks for listening and keep innovating.